Today's story is a bit strange. The film tells the story of the people who robbed the National Bank while dressed as Santa Claus. On December 23, 1927, the people of the small town of Cisco, Texas, were preparing to celebrate Christmas. Four former criminals used that day to carry out their plan to rob the First National Bank of Cisco. They were Henry Helms, Marshall Ratliff, Lewis Davis, and Robert Hale. Ratliff thought it would be a smart idea for him to participate in the robbery disguised as Santa Claus. He had previously been arrested for robbing a bank in Cisco, and decided that dressing up as Santa Claus would be an excellent disguise. Bank bonus. This was at a time when banks were being robbed on a regular basis in Texas. The Texas Bankers Association decided to take action to curb this phenomenon. The group offered a $5,000 reward to anyone who would shoot those involved in a Texas bank robbery. This display encouraged many civilians to carry their weapons and go toward any bank robbery they witnessed. On the morning of December 23, 1927, the four robbers robbed a car in Wichita Falls, Texas, where they were residing. They headed toward Cisco to carry out the bank robbery. As the four walked down the street toward the First National Bank in Cisco, they were greeted by several children greeting Ratliff dressed as Santa Claus. He smiled at them but continued heading towards the bank. Ratliff entered the bank door and passed the exchange office. He went to the Alame exchange office and began pulling a gun from a drawer under the counter that he knew was there. He ordered one of the tellers to open the safe. When this was over, Ratliff pulled a bag out from under his Santa costume. He and his partners began putting money and bonds into it. Inform the authorities. The lady followed. Blassingham and her 6-year-old daughter see Santa Claus inside the bank. As they entered, Blassingham realized a robbery was in progress. She immediately grabbed her daughter's hand and they ran to the bank's accounting office. She shouted when she realized the bank was being robbed, then opened a door into the alley. She left the bank screaming that it was being robbed. Blassingham continued screaming as she ran 1 block until she reached the Cisco Police Department. Meanwhile, the Cisco police chief, along with most of the nearby citizens, realized that the First National Bank was being robbed. When the Cisco police chief, J.N.E. Pete Bedford grabbed a rifle and headed toward the bank, followed by 2 guards. Upon his arrival, Bedford directed his guards to cover the back door of the bank. He entered the alley next to the bank while the other 2 guards headed towards the back exit. At that time, he saw several armed citizens in front of the bank and felt that the robbers would not be able to get past them. It is estimated that up to 100 Cisco residents eventually arrived at the bank ready to shoot the robbers. The local hardware store was loaning rifles to several residents. A $5,000 bonus offered by the Texas Bankers Association was the main incentive. This equates to approximately $75,000 in current currency. When Robert Hale, one of the robbers, saw a face outside watching through the bank window, Hill fired his shot toward the ceiling to show they were armed. All members of the robbery gang were shocked and bullets started being fired at them from outside. Soon hundreds of bullets were exchanged between the robbers inside the bank and the crowd outside. Ratliff and Lewis Davis were shot. There were also at least 6 city residents who were injured by bullets when the 4 robbers left the bank. They came out from the front of the building. They ordered 16 people to join them to create a human shield so they would not be shot by the crowd. They took 2 girls, one 12 and 10, from the crowd to use as hostages. A shootout with authorities took place before they reached their car parked in the alley. A deputy was shot and was being treated by another deputy when the robbers tried to leave the alley in their car. Chief Bedford stood in their way and exchanged gunfire with the 4 robbers. The police chief was shot 5 times and died 2 days later on Christmas. The deputy who was shot died a few weeks later in January. It wasn't long before the thieves had mechanical problems with their car. They stopped, got out of the car, and then waited for a car to pass. Thieves forced a young man out of his car. The young man told the thieves that they could take his car and fled. They brought a seriously injured Louis Davis into the new car. The thieves realized that the young man had given them the car but not the keys. They decided to leave Davis in the new car and return to their old car. Davis died later the same day from his gunshot wounds. The robbers were chased on foot after leaving the bank, with the crowd closing in as they returned to their old car. That's when another shooting occurred, and Hill, one of the bank thugs, was shot in the arm. They left the money in the new car and left the scene in their old car. Their car eventually broke down and the thieves fled. Ratliff left money and a Santa Claus costume in the broken-down car. The two girls were also left unharmed in the disabled vehicle. The sheriff and deputies from the local county were contacted and reported the bank robbery. A journalist heard about the robbery and reported it, and local citizens and police officers from across Texas went to Cisco to participate in the hunt for the criminals. Some came by car, while some rode horses and others were on foot. During the search, tracking dogs were used, as well as aircraft. The thieves managed to evade capture and steal another car, and the chase continued for the next 2 days. The 3 remaining thieves were eventually discovered and cornered at a place called the Brazos River, where further shootings occurred. Ratliff was wounded again during this battle and arrested. Henry Helms and Robert Hale remained in the escape for 2 additional days. They were eventually arrested on December 30, 1927, in the town of Graham, Texas. No one was able to claim the reward from the Texas Bankers Association because there were multiple shooters and it was not known exactly who shot the robbers. Henry Helms has been identified as the person who fatally shot 2 police officers. He was sentenced to death and the electric chair was executed on September 6, 1929. Robert Hale cried for mercy on the stand and was sentenced to 99 years in prison. Ratliff was sentenced to 99 years in prison for the bank robbery. He was also sentenced to death for the murder of a police officer. Ratliff stopped eating after receiving his death sentence and guards had to help him eat. One night, after his meal, Ratliff grabbed a gun from a guard and shot him several times. He was then caught. Upon hearing the news of the injured guard, local citizens were outraged and thousands gathered outside the prison. They stormed the building, dragged Ratliff outside, and hung him by his neck from a utility pole. On November 19, 1929, Ratliff's body was found hanging from a utility pole. No one was charged with the crime of summary execution, and here we have reached the end. Please like and subscribe.